Let's see. We'll do a roll call. Those who are here: Judy Olson,
Here.
Reed Johnson, Jim Dickinson,
Yes.
and Rich Fry, Todd Legacy, and Mike McKenzie all are doing different things. Mike is back, as Jim said, in the Midwest. Rich and Todd, we're going to try to dial in. They're both off. Rich is in Eastern Washington and Todd has another Zoom. And I'm here. Mike also said he was going to try to participate if he could, but I'm kind of surprised he had a lot going on. So with that, we don't have a flag. We're not in person. So if we could have a moment of silence. I like Rayma's idea of bringing our best to the meeting. Right. Let's see. So we have an open session next on the agenda, and let's see. So Mike Skehan sent an email and emailed a document that I received. Mike, how would you like to handle that? We're looking at 3-minute limits, but we have small attendance. You packed 936 words onto one page, and I won't be able to read it in 3 minutes, but would you care to? Or do you want to summarize it for the group? I think we'll want to, I've actually got several documents that a couple I'd hope to hand out in person, but also a couple of them were emailed this morning, which is, oh, there's Rich, okay. And so good. Rich, we just had roll call, so I'll add you there. We have a document from Rich as well. So we'll want to get those distributed probably with the minutes, but Mike, in the open comments section here, would you like to, oh, and I don't, yeah, Mike, would you care to unmute and present what you've sent?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep, I can.
Okay, very, very good. I'll just go ahead and read the my 3 minutes of fame here comment. Good evening, I'm Mike Skehan, residing at 2040 Granger Way, Lummi Island, and have been involved with ferry planning for the last 15 years as a LIFAC member, a PLIC board member, Community Association board member. Last month, Roland Middleton stated that the 5.3 million state grant will go towards the Gooseberry Terminal improvements and shore power study. I support both of those endeavors. I would like to emphasize the need to be carbon neutral or better in our planning for the future. Unfortunately, the larger 34-car ferry being sought does not accomplish this. Many of the assumptions made in the original KPFF ferry study adopted by the council have not come to pass, such as population growth, ferry traffic growth, and cost of building infrastructure. Much of that work needs a reality check now that COVID has fundamentally changed how we interact with one another, such as Zoom meetings when they work, travel patterns, and acceleration of climate change. The KPFF final report on page 195 shows various peak throughput of cars per hour for various loading patterns of 1 or 2 cars at a time for one or both of the docks. Would it surprise you that building a 28-car ferry and widening the Gooseberry dock to load 2 cars at a time would be more than double the 2-hour capacity of the Whatcom Chief? I'd be happy to show you how. The KPF report on page 9 estimates growth through 2040 to be, and I quote, "The demand model found that pedestrian and passenger traffic is forecast to increase nearly 40% and about 16% for vehicles by the year 2040. And we know that those assumptions are not becoming that were projected, but we're in a time where things are very uncertain, unsettled. So I ask each of you, why are we building a vessel so large that burns 2 to 3 times as much fuel as the current vessel does, when widening a dock is far cheaper to achieve double the existing capacity for the future? A key takeaway here is this: operating expenses are paid for by ferry fares and road fund taxes in nearly equal amounts. Double the expenses and expect to double the fares that we pay. On the other hand, capital expenses such as dock rebuilds and vessels are paid for entirely by other means, such as grants, taxes, road funds, etc., and do not count against raising fares. Finally, climate change will dictate we not add to our carbon footprint. Building a dock that accommodates 2 lanes for loading and unloading is a one-time expense. Yes, more construction puts more CO2 in the atmosphere, but only once over its lifetime. Running a larger ferry back and forth for 40 more years will be the equivalent of burning an additional 5 million gallons of diesel fuel to achieve the same result. Which path makes more sense to you? Be happy to answer your questions, but my internet is unstable. I don't even know if you got all that. Back to you, Chris.
Okay, Mike, I think I heard everything there. We'll circulate a copy of this for the committee. And thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have other public comment? Dave, did you?
Yes, actually, I would like to make I hope, a brief comment. I don't think Rich Hudson is here, which is unfortunate, but I'm gonna lob this grenade in anyway. At the last meeting, Rich said several times that next year's dry dock was in a quote unquote May/June timeframe, which sounds to me ominously like it would encompass Memorial Day weekend. And I, at the risk of stating the obvious, I think many of us feel that Memorial Day weekend's a pretty important weekend for many small business owners on the island. Some of them are fairly obvious, like the store, some of them not so obvious, like the people involved in short-term rentals. And, after a long freeze out through the winter in terms of cash flow, I at least think that weekend has to be pretty important to a lot of people. So I think it would be very unfortunate to see it included in the dry dock calendar. If I look at next year's calendar and we stuck to the Saturday to Saturday format, which is traditional, we could start dry dock on Saturday the 29th of April, 1 for 3 weeks, and be done a week before the long weekend. Alternatively, we could maybe run it Monday to Monday, a little smaller cushion before the long weekend, but there's some, and that would start it on May 1st, which is pretty darn close to when it started this year. And I know weather is a factor in these decisions, but it's just one factor of several. And I think I would argue that it's probably the least predictable. There's just no way to know what the weather gods are going to throw at us. I haven't been around here very long, but the worst storm I ever saw here was in 2015, and it occurred in the middle of August, and it knocked the power out in about a half of Bellingham. So there's no guarantees with the weather. That's my comment.
Well, thanks. That's a really good reminder. I mean, we do need to get that nailed down. This year, it seemed like they were able to take care of the services they needed in time to keep it away from Memorial Day. And I don't know, I guess I just assumed that we'd be keeping the maintenance schedule off the holiday. So good point, and we need to follow up with them. I thought Rich would join remotely, reached out to him, but
Rich
sorry.
did I did just reach out to Rich to make sure he knew it wasn't in person. He said he had his hands full down in Seattle. And his only update was that everything is running on schedule so far.
Okay, well, good. I reminded him about the Zoom too, didn't hear back. Good, okay. Let's see, anyone else not on the committee with comments? Mary, Bill, yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to mention the fact it seems like the last 3 weeks or so, we've had some interesting postings on Nextdoor and the community next door around ferry, around new ferry choices, around possibilities, around news of other folks, other locations in the ferries that have been selected. It just feels like to me that the committee could really look to improve the community outreach, to engage the folks who are actually interested in talking about these alternatives and understanding. I looked at one of the reports last meeting and was very enthused on how our grant was being reclassified. I believe the bridge to nowhere logic. But other than inside the meeting minutes, I don't think that's really been communicated. So when I just casually talk to people on the island, there's a whole lot of no one knows what's really going on. No one knows, are we going to get a ferry? It's just, do we have a plan B? I think a plan B is an important thing to always be talking about. And just looking towards and asking for a bit more of a community outreach than what we've seen even the last year. I mean, so it's not just what we've done in the last couple months. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to voice that. So,
well, I'll just say that during the, before, for like really 4 years before the pandemic, a little before that, there was considerable public outreach. You can see all that detailed in the raise and crab grants, and that's accessible to anyone. But part of one of the things in just a minute on the internal business was all that outreach now's the time to redouble. I had hoped that Mike could join us with some of the information he's working on with legislative contacts for for the funding process, because that kind of can consolidate awareness and provide a reason to reach out to many people. But we'll come back to that. I'd like to come back to the agenda. One last call. Anyone else not on the committee who has a public comment they wish to make? Okay, I'd be delighted to have a motion for approval of the minutes.
Approval of the minutes.
Do you have a second? A second from any member? Well, I'll second it. We have a bare quorum. Move approval. Reed,
Approved.
Judy,
And Judy's muted. I don't
you're
know.
muted.
Yeah.
Well, moving along, Rich,
So in all honesty, I just got all my mail stuff working, so I have not read them. Sorry.
all right. Jim, do you have a vote for approval? Jim, you're muted.
I'm sorry, I was having trouble here. I vote to approve the minutes. I'm so sorry.
Two. Jim? Do you vote to approve? Jim, you're muted. Or yeah, try up or down.
Okay, I don't have any particular problem with it. It's just that I'd like to look at it again. And I have been extremely busy the last few days and haven't done it. That's my problem.
Okay, well, we
Can you put it
have,
off till next meeting?
sure, if that's what folks want to do. I mean, I vote to approve. That's 3 out of 5. I'm not the parliamentarian with a lot of experience. That's a majority of the 5. Does that approve? I believe so.
I think it does. Yeah.
Okay, well, approve them, please. If you want to explore them further, please do. And my interest is to get them posted on county website. All right, moving along into LIFAC internal business. I just wanted to cover a couple of things. Let's see, the first item I had was the hybrid meeting format. Originally asked Bill for kind of a presentation of options for this meeting, but he wanted to have another meeting under the group's belt before doing that. So a question to you then, Bill, is does it still work for you to think about next meeting, the June meeting, as a time to go over that?
I think I still want another one, another hybrid, so that we can make a few tweaks.
Okay.
I have heard, I am talking to Mary. We talked right before the meeting, but I want to follow up with her to get her experience with Leica and some of the other meetings that we've had. So we'll let's try to put it off to July. That I guess that means. So
that may mean August, because at least we're trying to have a meeting in town at the Civic Center for the budget and performance review. in July.
Okay, so August is one of the months that Mary will be, I'll be out of town. So
Okay.
now we're into September, and that seems like a long time away for us to try to figure out how to make this work better. Why?
Well, I mean, we could see about July and do it from there, but I'd expect the meeting to focus. I mean, usually we have several presentations. It's pretty focused. You know, it doesn't necessarily mean it's impossible.
Yeah, why don't let me get with Mary, and maybe what we do is rather than do a presentation, we actually just make a proposal that can be, sent around to all the council members. And, we're probably just talking about some minor tweaks and minor improvement as we go. We don't have the answers. We don't have the equipment to do everything we'd want to do. I mean, so let's take it up more organically, I think, because there would not be a presentation that would just say, you know what, if we did this, this is how it's going to work perfectly for us. I mean, it's going to be here's some challenges, figure out the solutions for it. So let's try to accomplish it, Chris, in a different way, because of the time frame what we're dealing with. And then we can always talk about it at even the next meeting, just perhaps more conversational of these challenges. What do we think? So
Okay. Well, I guess what I had been hoping for was, like, I think the way I understood some of what you'd said earlier gave me the idea of, the committee could look at the kind of range of options that we might want to implement, maybe in a kind of a organic or developmental fashion, try a little, see how that works. So I think that can fit. I think the main thing is for committee members to be able to, make a conscious decision about about the kind of commitment the committee wants to make, or try. Maybe that's a better way to put it.
yeah, and I understand. Let me see what I can put together, and then once I put it together, then we can see what's appropriate, where to present it, how to distribute it,
Okay.
that type of thing.
And as a suggestion, maybe it would be really helpful to the group to have the example, even if it's, a big effort, to kind of say, well, here's the ideal here, here's the most we could, that would really facilitate the committee business and all the outreach stuff that you've been talking about. I mean, maybe there's a way to, give it a higher profile, better platform. So, and for me, at least, that kind of dovetails into the next item, which I wanted to at least let the committee know is under some discussion. Reed and I had a Zoom meeting with Jill Nixon and Monica Rouse at the county council office about we had difficulties, as we've seen, with a couple of the email distribution addresses, and how the handoffs went for those. But also the bigger question, and this really came from county council office staff, is the possibility of them doing more support for the committee. However invisible and low this committee's profile may be, the LIFAC is kind of seen as one of the more active and involved and productive committees of the county council advisory committees. I'd say we haven't seen so much of that for the last couple of years, but some of those other committees have better support. Roland talked about that a little bit at our last meeting and why some did and some didn't. But Jill was open to considering more specific support that might include a number of things, including, we didn't get into many specifics, I guess, Reed, but we did talk about the county council office having responsibility for managing the Google Groups account, managing the email addresses and groups and how they were distributed to subscribers, and doing that better, but also serving some of the obligations we have under the Open Public Meetings Act to give sufficient announcement and that kind of thing, sufficient notice. So, Reed, please tell me if I'm off track on anything here, but she said that they are moving into their 2-year budget process, and that so there's maybe, I don't know, I took it to be like a couple of months if we're able to think about and identify needs that the committee could use for better support from the council office. Jill was pretty encouraging about that. I have another track I intend to pursue, didn't make much progress this week, but I do want to talk to Todd Donovan about that. And, we got what seemed to me some encouragement to ask for more than I've ever heard before. So
Yeah, I think
anything to add, Reed?
Yeah, I think that's right on the same track. She kind of encouraged us to go towards Todd's direction to ask for that.
And there he is.
And especially as it comes time to be securing funding and coordinating communication a little bit more and stuff, it seemed like that was kind of where she connected those dots for it obviously be helpful. But that was an encouraging part of the conversation for sure. And to just have them take over the emails instead of us being left to our own devices of sharing passwords and logins and things. I think that'll be nice.
Well, and it even does relate to some of the Zoom questions. I mean, some council and committee activities probably have, more support on the county, on the council or public works and county staffing end than we have had. And I think there's some level of recognition that the volunteer efforts of this committee have actually, I mean, maybe people haven't seen it so much recently, but there was a lot of activity for a number of years, and it involved a lot of people, islanders, but also, public works and county council people. So I think we can do that. And I'd be, I would welcome thoughts and ideas along those lines, because I think that's an opportunity. The other thing I wanted to mention, not to spend too much time on it, but we did, the day after our April meeting, we had an invitation from LIFAC to give a presentation at their their first in-person meeting at the Grange Hall. And so Mike McKenzie and I went to that, and you may have been able to see it on Zoom. It was recorded and handled remotely there. And Rama also showed up and had contributed. And that was an area where they were trying to get the word out more. And so it seemed like another forum to, do some outreach. The both remote and in-person attendance was very minimal. Though, Bill, I'll note that there were 2 folks supporting the Zoom function. And I don't know, it seemed like a useful thing. It was really nice. We did, I took, being not such a virtual guy, but more of a paper guy, I took a handout that combined a timeline that Judy had done for up through 2017 or 2018, and another one pager that Mike Skihan did that was kind of a recap of the ferry replacement work that had gone on. They did put that up on those 2 pieces on the Zoom meeting, and then we left some copies for people. They're part of the package that I want to circulate to the committee members, along with some of the other things we're accumulating, because they're really useful in just having a concise, quick recap. It doesn't go into huge detail, but it helps give a picture of what's led up to the present and what were some of the actions and decisions. And when was the county council resolution that committed to having the ferry in operation by the end of 2026? And then there was a subsequent resolution that committed to electrification. And I at least from my reading in the RAISE grant application, even since that time, there's been some, the RAISE grant application, if I understand it right, really makes a much bolder commitment to full electrical operation much sooner than I had ever heard discussed before. So that's something to consider, keep in mind. Let's see, it's also not on the internal business, but I wanted to mention another meeting that Jim Dickinson and I had at Public Works. Jim offered some of his thoughts and concerns about various things that he's been talking about for a number of years, and presented those to Liz Cosa and Rich Hudson, and we went over a pretty long list. And I know that it's not everything you've aimed for, Jim, but it got some of the particular concerns. There were some real specific design concerns that they picked right up on, and expressed openness to incorporating them into final design build document or RFP. So I just think that was a useful thing to have done. let's see, I'm taking more than the allotted time on the calendar items. Well, we've talked about Bill's approach to the Zoom options. I did email Roland with a request for a presentation at the June meeting of the suite of subjects that he'd offered to provide a presentation on, and also just reminded Public Works about the need to have hopefully the July meeting. I don't know, it seems like things are kind of fluid, but we really, it's my hope we can do the budget and performance review. I think that would be useful to everybody. I think it would be especially useful to newer members or those of us like myself who have been a little more out of the loop lately. Let's see, that covers the items up to old business. I guess without Rich or Roland or Mike McKenzie, I'm sorry, but I was hoping at least somebody in that group would be able to present stuff. Dave, were you? Oh, I wasn't sure if you were raising your hand. Okay. Bill?
Chris, on those documents you mentioned sending around to the committee members, could you also try to find a way to get those publicly available? I mean, whether...
Absolutely. That's something that rolls into how they get publicly posted. We have to do the agenda and minutes. One of the needs that I think we need to talk about with the county council office is, I don't know all of their internal, they have, real digital security needs and requirements. And I think that it seems like there's the Public Works and the county council documents, archives, all of that stuff. But it also seems like the committee, we're receiving a lot of stuff. And it seems like there ought to be a way to make those available publicly. But so I don't mean to be, I don't ignore the interest, but for the immediate challenge to me, or the way, or to my thinking about it, is trying to get this stuff available to committee members that first, and that, which doesn't preclude wider scope, but I guess I've been thinking of it in a kind of a primitive step-by-step way. Yes, Dave?
If it's okay with you, I'd just like to insert a comment, having some experience with this. California, we have something called the Brown Act, which is, I don't know what the equivalent is in Washington, but in a nutshell, if you have documents that are submitted ahead of time that are part of the agenda, they should be appended to the agenda that's posted on the county website. Similarly, if someone brings documents into the meeting, de novo documents that haven't been seen before, they should be appended to the minutes of the meeting. And I mean, in terms of legal transparency, that's just basic, right? The committee shouldn't be seeing documents that I can't see as a taxpayer. And I don't think it's that arduous. I mean, you're talking about PDF files, and so you have other files that need to be
Yeah.
appended to them.
No. More?
No, that's my comment.
Yeah, so I'd like to respond to that because, yeah, they should be appended to approved minutes. That seems like a very obvious vehicle. The documents, for instance, example of some of the documents I received, did not receive them until this morning, last night. And we'd already issued the agenda. So the thought there is there's a little gap. Absolutely, they need to be available to the public. But how that flows through, it seems like if we get them far enough, you know, I'm just talking like a couple of days, like before the agenda goes out, then we can append documents. I think we've done that before. I'm sorry, I don't feel like I'm giving very great answers here, but you know, I think there's, we want to make stuff as widely available as possible. It's just when it comes in at the last minute. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the proposal, Chris, is just that these documents you spoke of would be appended to the minutes that you would approve in the next meeting. And,
Yeah, well,
you know,
yeah.
and that's all. I mean, you know, so obviously they wouldn't be instantaneously available unless, I mean, that would be nice for some of these discussions, but just as far as getting them, you know, into the next set of meetings, if they didn't, or into the meeting minutes that have occurred for this public forum, right?
And yeah, and that's how I was thinking about it in not a very clear way. But there is this, we just now appended or approved the minutes from last month. It would, I think there's a set of documents that weren't talked about at that meeting, but I just brought up that could be appended to it because it happened in the period before last month's minutes were approved. Simple things. The ones for tonight, or that came in tonight, I guess all I was trying to do is think of a way to get them out ahead before tonight's minutes are approved, but maybe that's not real straightforward. Anyway, I'm not attached to one particular way, just trying to deal with what comes up. Yes, I believe Rich, and also Rich, and then Jim.
That's fine. Go ahead.
So is there some reason why within a few days after a meeting, if there are documents that haven't been posted that are presented or that were late, can't be posted along with the announcement, and then when the minutes are approved, that all goes together, but the documents are available if that's desirable. Just thought.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I was hopeful about is that if we receive documents, I'm trying to finalize the agenda by Friday before the meeting. If I've received documents by then and the agenda gets a day or so of review and then final, if I have those documents before, then we can append the submissions to the agenda. And that isn't what happened this time. I probably could have put in a couple of the things from the LIFAC presentation. But that way, committee members would have have a chance to review them and be able to talk about them, and then we can approve the minutes of the meeting. So, yeah. I don't have any more on that. Anybody else?
Well, I was just gonna say that it seems appropriate to me that any documents that community members want to submit that are sort of pertinent to a monthly meeting should be available for the person that's posting the agenda previous month's meetings to post at the same time, so that there's time to review those documents prior to the meeting. And then once the minutes for that meeting are approved, then they become public record and sent to the county. Yeah.
And
That's-
and that touches on some of what Reed and I were talking with county council office on. This is you know, the level of support we can get, so that, and because of the difficulty with the Google Groups addresses and how that's working and not working so well, we've written out a procedure and then revised it that we can incorporate the county council office as well, because which I don't think we've been very clear about what the deadline is for our agenda. You know, how long do we spend before getting it out? Last month, we really didn't make the public announcement deadline. This month, we barely did, but it was kind of a difficulty. And
you know, I
trying to improve that.
Yeah, I just had a thought, and it kind of goes back to Bill's comment earlier about improving community outreach. And I do feel that the tome is the main way to for the community members to be knowledgeable and engaged about the activities of this committee meeting. And maybe within that home announcement that we do monthly, we could remember to include in that anyone who wants to sign up to the Google groups to get all of these, that's what they need to do. They need to be intentional and proactive about getting themselves on that to be better informed.
Yeah.
And I don't know, the Google groups confuses me a little bit, and I don't know if that's the announcement group or the other group that's active. Does anybody know or understand that?
My understanding is all the problems centered on the LIFAC announce email address. And Jill and Monica were able to they talked with Nancy Ging. They obtained the full list of people who had subscribed to that. and just in time, because Jill thought she had sorted it out, and she's sharing the management of it until she learns a little more with Nancy, but with the goal to taking on the responsibility for managing those two email addresses. But then she encountered some of the same problems others of us had with that LIFAC announce. So she, if I have this right, I don't have her email in front of me, but she said, luckily we got all the names of subscribers, she was able to send notice back out to them, and then wasn't permitted to do more stuff through Google Groups.
Hmm.
So the different experiences that you and Reed and even I have had, though I haven't gone as far along it as the two of you, at least it gave her some firsthand exposure to it.
Yeah, it's my understanding that Nancy Ging is the owner of the group. An owner is the manager, and Ray was a manager, and Nancy made me a manager, which allows you to add new email addresses to the list. So I hope that what you're talking about is transferring the actual ownership of the group from Nancy to perhaps Jill.
Oh, yes, and Todd, just saying this in your direction, that was really the thrust of what we're looking at. It seems pretty apparent.
Well, of course.
It seems pretty apparent that the management and handling of the distribution mechanism needs to live with county council office, not a rotating list of committee members.
Yeah, and I'll just say, and this gets to the staffing issue that you're talking about earlier, and I'll talk with Jill about that. That's a resource. That's a resource thing, because I don't want to commit to any more work for Jill.
Of course.
And that gets to the budget ask you're talking about before, and that's a council's thing, looking for more resources for our staff so they can staff committees like this. So yeah, I mean, I totally get, like, except for Roland, and because he's working for Public Works, so he's not really staffing you as a group.
Right.
So getting somebody from the council office,
Yeah.
and I'll just say right now, I think Jill's kind of maxed out, but that's why this would be a budget. But I'm listening, I'm hearing all that. So
yeah,
I have crappy internet right now.
And she wasn't making any commitments and was clear about limitations, but her point was the budget process that's coming up is kind of the appropriate way to think about this.
Yeah, and that is for council as an agency to ask for more money from the executives.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And we're hearing you.
And the other thing, I mean, yeah, Roland's Public Works, and so is Liz, and so is Rich, and we're here to serve the council. That's why we're here. And so it seems like that's the right place to lodge the interest and the request.
We just got to remember this in September when we do the budget. help me with that, and we'll talk offline on this stuff. So
okay,
yeah, I get it. Okay, great.
Okay, thanks a lot. Let's see. Is there anything else on this suite of items from anybody? I'm feel like it's a little bit of a rabbit trail, but it is also apparent that it's an opportunity for improvement that could really help the committee activities. And it also seems like we've really proved the value of support to the committee. Yes, Dave?
If I could just insert one last thing. Bill raised the subject of Nextdoor earlier, and my personal feeling is, if you want to raise the profile of the committee, make more people aware of what you're doing, you need to use Nextdoor. There's over 1,500 subscribers on Nextdoor. The Tome has about 200, and the Tome is a sluggish monthly thing. If you want to reach people in real time, Nextdoor is the most efficient way to do it. And it's really all we have in terms of a community bulletin board that a lot of people see. The meetings aren't announced on it. The reason I drove to the Grange and then the firehouse tonight is because nobody posted on Nextdoor that the meeting had been changed to Zoom only. And that's low hanging fruit to get stuff on Nextdoor. There's several committee members who are members of it. I just think you should use it more and not rely on the tome or the email list. A lot of people aren't on the email list. I'm not.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's my
I also just sort of anecdotally know a lot of people that will not go near Nextdoor. So there might be a lot of subscribers, but a lot of the people that I personally associate with won't go near it.
Well, 1,500 to 200 is the tally according to the number
Right.
of subscribers. So
Right.
that's
Definitely. But just because there's 1,500 subscribers doesn't mean they're using it.
true.
Yeah.
But there's way more than 200 residents and property owners on the island.
Yep. No, I get it. Definitely. And in fact, I think that we need to utilize them all, including better utilization of the LIFAC Google Groups email. All of the above.
Yeah, well, and it is a resource issue. So, if a committee member wants to volunteer to do that, but I think using as many channels as long as we can sustain the support. That's all. And maybe there's a way to more have a posting to Nextdoor, at least with the basic stuff, a routine matter. Yeah. So, Rich?
This ties into something I've been thinking about lately. I'm among those people that has really mixed feelings about Nextdoor because I don't think a discussion group is really what we're looking for. I think a way to convey information in a timely way is useful, but I also feel that it's been some years since we've had any kind of major public input or public meetings on this, and that maybe it would be time for something like a survey, some kind of description of where we are in the process, and asking people how they, laying out some things and asking people questions about various aspects of how they're doing with the program, and if they have other ideas they want to submit or concerns, something like that. So I have a fair amount of experience doing that. I can put something together like that if we wanted to try something like that.
Jim Dickinson first and then Bill.
Okay, well, here's what I think about Nextdoor. As a veteran of, well, you want to call it Nextdoor. It's messy. Some people can get downright mean on it. But if you're just posting things, there's a real, or just you don't want to read it, dump it. So I think it's definitely a very good way to get to people. You're going to get to a lot of people. You may get some crazy feedback, but that's life. As far as I know that when we were, evaluating the High-U, we got, oh my goodness, did I get shelled at? And it's okay. That's life. As far as it's a great place. It's a great place to get people across, get ideas across. So that's that. I also want to know, is there going to be a time here to answer some of Mike Skihan's things and then we'll talk a little bit about what the meeting we had with the county.
Bill, you had,
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with Judy. I think, I think we, the committee should consider multiple mechanisms. I mean, everything from next door to the island's website to the email group to a Facebook group. I mean, anything we can do to communicate that out. And my question, Chris, to you was, being one of these volunteers who's not on the committee, does that, the reason I did not post on Nextdoor that would have kept, was that I'm not on the committee. So, I mean, I don't feel empowered to say, hey, I have this knowledge, we're going to full hybrid, but I'm not going to post it out there for someone else. So, I mean, does it have to be, when you were asking for volunteers, do we have to stick within the committee to really keep that outreach, to keep that communications, that type of thing going? Is it really all on only y'all's shoulders, since it's in our benefit across the board for the community?
Jim?
I agree too. And I don't think we need to stay within the committee. I think we could appoint somebody to do that for us, or ask, request them to do it. I don't think it has to be one of us that does that, to post a notice. I guess fine.
I guess my response would be, doesn't have to be a committee member, but I think the committee needs to be involved in deciding and providing guidance about what it's supposed to do. And, like, as I'm listening to people, just Dave's point about reaching a lot of people is just really good. And maybe the committee, this is just an example, I'm not attached to it, but just as an example, the committee could say, well, once the agenda's out, every month before our monthly meeting, we'd like to just post a notice about the meeting and provide enough information for people to get the agenda, to, whether it's a link or however it gets it out there. So just a reminder, meeting coming up next week. Here's where you can find more information about it. And maybe there's some events or other activities that would fit in that. So it's brief and alert, but also kind of provides the opportunity for people. It doesn't necessarily put the whole package in front of you. So, if this is something you care about, here's where you can get it. Something like that. But so my response off the top of my head is just, the committee needs to kind of shape it a little bit, but we've had all kinds of involvement from community members all along. And there's no reason to squelch that. Does that make sense to others?
I like that.
Okay. Excuse me here. So we got a late start. I am tracking the time. I kind of promised folks here that we were going to be done at about 7:30. Jim, your question, if you would, it seems like we don't have any operations report from Rich. We don't have any updates either from Roland or through Rich. Mike McKenzie was gonna have some kind of an organized thing about legislative awareness, and those were all items that I had originally kind of counted on to spend some time with. since we don't have those, I guess I'd like to invite Jim to share more of his stuff. I mean, I didn't really have a lot of specific content about our meeting with Public Works, but there's a lot packed in to Mike's document, and I feel like I'm running out of time to wade into that very far.
Okay,
So Jim,
yeah, proceed. Okay, I'm gonna, and this comes back to, I was actually working on something this week, trying to put together a bit of a mini presentation. But this works into what Mr. Sheehan's come to say. Now, first of all, the one thing that seems to be kind of a misconception is, and that is that the fuel use of a boat is directly compared to how big it is. That is not true. There's a great many factors to it. And just for example, I'm going to do a very crude calculation that I think that Rich has done before here. And if you have an efficient boat and it's 100 feet long, your hull speed is going to be about 11 knots. If you got an efficient boat that's about 150 feet long, it's going to be 16.5 knots. And if you got an efficient boat that's 175 feet long, it's going to be about 17.6 knots. Now, what happens, there was a paper written by a designer named, who is I think this is the founder of Gilbert and Associates boat designers, who design most of the East Coast ferry boats, that if you lengthen the boat, not only, and if everything is right, not only do you get an increase in speed, you also get a decrease of fuel use. So the problem that we're seeing here with now I understand what Mr. Mike has had to say here, is that the problem we have with the fuel use that's projected on the new boat is not due to the length or the size, it's due to the design. And when I went to the county and talked to Rich and the ferry director, and what we came, and through a number of things, we actually highlighted where some of the problems were with the new design. The new design was taken from a Texas state ferry design, and it's meant for shallow water. Well, we have enough water that we don't have to go that way. We could use, let's say, a V-hull or a modified V-hull like the Whatcom Chief had. The Whatcom Chief is a very pretty efficient boat. Now, I can't say it's as efficient as it could be. It burns 142 gallons a day average. Now, if we look through and we just kept the same kind of hull efficiency, the newer boats working from the Caterpillar engine spec would be around 150, 154 gallons a day. And then there's the Hayu, which defies everything, and I have done calculations on this and worked backwards through calculations, who came out to about 140 gallons a day. Now, I can tell you why. It's a big old battleship, all right, but it's got very nice lines, and it's got big torquey engines, which really comes into play here. But so the thing is, it's not that we have to worry about particularly the size of the boat being the fuel hog, using a lot of fuel. It's how it's designed, how it enters the water. Just for example, if you've ever been around a racing scull, which is kind of a pointed thing, it's kind of a pointed, narrow little boat. And when you quit rowing, that thing keeps going. On the other hand, if you're around a pram, which a lot of us have, it's a little kind of blunt-ended thing. The second you stop rowing, it stops. And the design that Elliott Bay has given us is more like a pram. And when the Texas State Ferry says they're to the previous all diesel boat went from the diesel boat burned 10 gallons an hour, and this one burned 27. It lit off my brain. And so I started looking into it. So what we're looking at here is not necessarily the size of the boat. It is how it's designed, how it goes through the water. The Whatcom Chief does a really nice, according to Matt Nichols, you could sponsor the Whatcom Chief, keep the same engines and go out to 160 feet and burn no more fuel than it does right now. And I mean, he's the CEO of Nichols Brothers Boat Builders. We actually went down and talked to him about 6 or 8 of us did at one time.
Jim,
But the Whatcom Chief is out old and too worn out.
Jim, just a
So
moment.
if we
Jim,
build a Whatcom Chief and build a bigger one, we'd be fine. Or a V type of hull, we wouldn't be burning that much.
Jim, just a moment. It looks like Rich has a comment or a question.
Sure. Go ahead.
Rich, you're muted.
Okay.
You're there.
It's a quick question. So the question that arises for me is the nature of this run that unlike most vessels, when you do these calculations that these equations are derived from, we're talking about a boat cruising at a constant speed with a certain drag that can be measured at that constant speed. And therefore, a vessel and drag is manifested. But if you have a run like ours, where half the run is accelerating and decelerating, regardless of what kind of hull you have, you still have to push that mass from 0 speed to some positive speed. And then a couple minutes later, you have to slow it down to 0 again. And that's where the energy goes.
Well, I have taken that into account. So the numbers I said was on the 34 car ferry, depending which it had a 6 or 12 cylinder engine, are in the 150 to 155 gallon per day met. This is just a diesel boat. This has nothing to do with the other stuff. That until you get a source of electricity offshore or onshore source of electricity, you are not going to be able to well, you're going to be burning way more fuel with the hybrid diesel boat we're going to have, because you've got generation losses, you've got battery losses, you've got all this other stuff. Once you have a offshore, so one of my discussions with Rich and Elizabeth was that they had to get the grant, they have to do this, and I was saying, okay, put the bigger engines and shut the electric off, because you'd be, you wouldn't be over 155 gallons a day. Now, I think a better way to look at this might be how much fuel used per car space, because that would, right now, as we're looking at it, in a diesel boat, the old high use, the winter. And I had some pictures of that in the hull and whatever else. But it's also way heavier boat than we need. But yes, I understand that. I understand that point. But that's one of the reasons why I'd go to the size bigger diesels, even though it doesn't reflect it in the calculation. The 6-cylinder actually runs about 5 gallons less than the 12, but also the 6-cylinder, the 12-cylinder will go 4 to 6 times as long in engine life, because it's being run so much less, and the larger moving mass of the larger engine is going to give a lot more torque, and it's going to kick it off a lot quicker. So that's where I'm coming from. So as far as the 34 car boat, I think it's going to be obsolete the day it gets here. I think the demographics are changing in the island, but we don't, we got a census coming up. We'll know more than that hits. Because I know a lot of people that are moving out here full time that, boy, they had summer cabins or whatever else. I think you're going to find that the projection for one thing, we know that the pandemic has just thrown all the old projections out. And I think we're going to see more people out here than we've ever seen. Go ahead. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was wondering, Jim, do you know if the county actually keeps good data as to really what traffic is going back and forth? Like recorded every run? Because
Oh, yeah, they do. Yeah.
They do that. Yes.
Yeah.
They're really pretty good at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, so you could actually go back and figure out, one of the impacts of more people moving here is that there's more business traffic, I believe, as we all try to get repairs done and other things that are increased. So it's all of those things being placed into the models that you guys are looking at, versus what was just thought of, like we said, 5 years ago or 6 years ago.
Well, to answer both Rich and Mike also, that I don't think the difference between the fuel use between a 28 car and a 34 is going to be even significant. Because of the hull speed. But yeah, coming back to you, they do keep really good records, and you can go down there, you can see how many people and passengers, cars, whatever, on every trip. They've got it well documented.
Yeah, and I think that if we have a review presented to us in whatever month that was, that would include all that data. We've seen it before. It's been presented to us before, Bill. So it's definitely available.
I would just comment, maybe this is a little bit of a minority report here, but the county Public Works keeps really good fare data. They record it and report it. But the fare data is not necessarily the same thing as ridership, and we've kind of gotten into that a few times. I think there's room for improvement, but they do have good fare data, which kind of allows making some pretty sound assumptions about ridership. And they also, for a while, they did very focused full sampling. It's hard with a three crew or 3 crew member crew to do it all the time, but they had very sound sampling. But I just want to point out that we have some different opinions and positions on this, just on the committee and with attendees. One of Mike's points was that the population growth is lower than projected. And so we're, kind of, there's different perceptions here. I just, have to acknowledge that.
The one thing, no matter what size ferry, no matter what we do, we need an efficient hull. We need an efficient, seaworthy boat. And some comments have been said that the Whatcom Chief rolls a lot. Well, as a commercial fisherman, I don't think so. But yeah, I've been in a lot worse places. But even if you did use that same hull, deepened it slightly, lengthened it and widened it, it would not be the same boat that we have now. It would be far seaworthier than what we have now, and it would, as far as drag wise, work pretty well. I personally like where the vessel starts at a deep V and then widens out like the old steel electrics and the Hayu. To me, what was interesting was years ago, the Steel Electrics, which are, I don't know if people know who they are, but they were the old 80-year-old boats that were wiped out in 2007 because they kept cracking hull plates. They were old. And in the 50s, they widened them from 55 to 74 feet. They went about halfway up the hull and then put a wider extension on the hull. They basically flattened the curve of the hull, the verticality of the hull. And actually, they got, not only did they get to haul a lot more cars, but they burned less fuel. And so there's a lot to this. And we need to be looking at those things. And I'm hoping maybe the next meeting I can have this sorted together so I can show pictures and of what I'm talking about. Because
Jim, can I chime in here?
sure, go ahead.
Yeah, you know, what I want to say is, I want to ask several folks that have presented information about that. To my summary of this is questioning the design of the boat that has been established. And by hashing these things out in this committee meeting now, under this group of people, what action plans do you want to have? We're not going to change the design of the boat here in this committee meeting.
No, that will
no.
be changed
So-
in the request for proposals.
Okay, so I guess my question is, why are we beating it here? And then the same comment goes to the issues that Mike Skehan and Rich are bringing up. Where do people want to go with these issues that people are seeing about the proposed design of the boat that has been proposed and is, as far as I can tell, standing in good order? I don't know how to ask the question any better than that. I'm sorry, but I feel this way a lot when we beat this in this setting about very, very, very specific things about the boat design that I don't think really belong here in this committee meeting to be hashed out. So I guess my question is, where do people that see issues with this boat design want to go with this, with the concerns?
And Rich, let's give Rich a chance.
Go ahead.
I'll be very, very brief for this. And the context for this is that a couple of weeks ago, Chris and I had a couple of hour chat at my place and really kind of thrashed around with this very question. And my interpretation of where we wound up, starting from very different positions, is that my take. So I think a lot of us have the view that this particular boat is somehow decided on and engraved in stone. And my understanding of the vessel procurement process is that we're still early days for determining what this final boat is going to look like. We have a working plan. We're exploring all of those possibilities. We're still considering our options. It's 4 years since this particular project was selected. We haven't compared it to existing conditions, nor to where we are in a learning curve about what we need and what we want to do. So my position is that our job is to continue to try to fine tune this direction so that when a final plan is actually contracted out, it represents the best thing that we can put in the water for our best guess about the service environment, what the service environment is going to be for Lummi Island in a future which is completely unpredictable for a number of reasons that were not considered in this initial planning process that the consulting team came up with. So as the situation changes and as we learn more, we are perfectly free to make adjustments that our research tells us are the best for the island and for our best guesses about the future. So
That's all.
I recall my discussion with Chris is that we've got another year and a half or so before we're in a position where I think we have to worry about penalties or anything like that. My 2 cents.
Okay, I want to answer that. First of all, that having watched Whatcom County being involved in the courthouse remodel and then as a contractor and a number of other things, that we often see things happening in the paths of least resistance. It's just easy to do something than to pick up a package and stamp it and say, it's all done. We don't have to worry about it. Well, we can find out that it didn't come out like it was supposed to. Not only was it extremely over budget, but it's also now failing. We have to start somewhere. We have to begin to understand, and as a committee here, we need to understand why this works and why things don't work, and look at historical data and everything else. You know, the worst thing, if we went forward with this boat that they have right now, Mike is right about Mike Skihan's right about the fuel use. And we don't want that. We don't want to pay an extra $2 a trip.
Folks, we're 5 minutes away from an hour and a half. I have to leave this meeting in less than 5 minutes. This is good discussion. I think Rick, both Rich and Jim they've pointed out potential opportunities for refinement to the design we have on record. I will just say that I have real concerns about things that can affect the ability to deliver a replacement vessel by December 31 of 2026.
Yeah.
And that may mean that none of us gets all of the things we're looking for, but I have real concerns about jeopardizing the ability to obtain a vessel by that date.
Yeah, and
And
Chris, I
so-
would add to that and say it's critical that we stay on the time frame. And so what I was going to say, and I interrupted you, I'm sorry, is that I think that we need to work backwards from those time frames and set milestones, so that if there is an opportunity to tweak, if there's an opportunity to see trends in population or trends in climate change or trends anywhere, there has to be a line drawn in the sand where we're done with that and we have to follow the time frame that we need to follow to make this happen. And I'm all for reviewing to make sure that everything is as current and as solid as it can possibly be. But you have to draw a line in the sand somewhere, and you have to submit that proposal for building the boat and get it done. And we cannot, I agree, Chris, we cannot go back on that. There's no way.
Well,
So-
and so one of the most positive
Chris, I
takeaways from from the meeting Jim and I had with Public Works was that there were specifics that Jim pointed out that represent opportunities for refinement. And and they don't necessarily have to be restricted to hull design. They might be other kinds of refinements. So just what you said, Judy, of working backwards, I think I haven't been able to do it this week or last week, but to be able to get a sense of, really, it's almost month by month at this point. I think the Public Works figures on about 2 years from letting the contract to delivering a vessel. And so the rest of this year, that's 2025 and 2026. So we've got a couple of years and a little bit, and we need to, get an idea of that timeline. And my feeling is, as a committee, be in sync with that, so we're supporting that process. And I think we've gotten a clear indication that there's some room, but it's not a blank slate. And so I've got to go. And I would like to entertain a motion for adjournment. I think this is good discussion. I honestly think it would be even better in person. And I'm really sorry that kind of fell apart.
So I just have a first note here to close. I was looking at Nextdoor as we were on the meeting here, and I see that the DART meeting changed its meeting date to tomorrow due to a conflict.
Oh, that's great. And I'll just end with a quote. Some of you may have already heard this, but I think it describes the situation we're in. The probability of the actual is absolute. That we have no power to guess it out beforehand makes it no less certain. That we may imagine alternate histories means nothing at all. So here we are.
Very good, Chris. Thanks.
We're going to have to do something, and we'll all have little disagreements with it, but it's still the right work, and it's good stuff that you're doing. So with that, do we have a motion for adjournment?
I motion that we adjourn.
Any second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, bye-bye.